The conscience, part 1, 3 pictures of the conscience. Let's talk about it. The Bible, especially the New Testament, is centered around the doctrine of the conscience. What is the conscience, though, and how do we think about it? I.e., got to spell right. I'm going to offer, for your suggestion and for your consideration, 3 pictures of the conscience to help think about it and meditate on it. And the first picture is the picture of a home plate umpire. If you can imagine, you go to the baseball game and here's the umpire. You're the pitcher. He's standing there. There's the catcher. This is the catcher who's looking behind the mask. And there behind the catcher is the home plate umpire. He's also in a mask and he's not part of the game. He's just sitting there with his eyes watching every single pitch that comes in. And if it's a strike, he's calling that a strike. And if it's outside and it's a ball, he's calling it a ball. Now, the important thing about this picture of the conscience is that the umpire, the official, is not actually part of the game. In fact, I think that the rules of baseball say that if the ball hits the umpire, it's immediately a dead ball and the play stops. And yet the umpire, the official, is such an important part of the game because he's making these judgments. He's saying that was right and that was wrong. And so the conscience is there making a judgment about the things that we do, the things that we say, the things that we think. It's saying that was right or that was wrong, that was good or that was bad, that was right or that was holy or that was evil. Now, just like a home plate umpire, our conscience can be wrong. In other words, it can be misinformed. It can be misguided. It can make the wrong decision. If you do something right, your conscience might say, no, that was wrong. Or vice versa. You could do something wrong and your conscience can say this was right. Now, this characteristic of the conscience, that it can be right or wrong, is important for us to meditate on. In fact, we want to have a rightly trained conscience. And in these series of videos talking about the conscience, we'll talk about it. Now, the chief text for this is in Romans chapter 2, starting with verse 14. And this is really going to be the chief text defining the conscience for us. We begin with verse 14. When the Gentiles who do not have the law by nature do the things in the law, these, although not having the law, are a law to themselves, who show the work of the law written in their hearts, their conscience also bearing witness. And between themselves their thoughts accusing or accusing them, excusing or accusing, in the day when God will judge the secrets of men by Jesus Christ, according to my gospel. Now, that verse says that the conscience is either accusing or excusing. It's saying that what you did was wrong or what you did was justified. And so the conscience, like the home plate umpire, is sitting there saying, good or bad, strike or ball. Now, the conscience, and we'll talk about this more later, it's not only judging the things that we do, think, and say, but it also judges the things that other people are doing, thinking, and saying all around us. But I want to put that in there as the first picture of the conscience. Now, the second picture of the conscience that I'd like to suggest to you is that the conscience is like a window. And imagine that you're standing inside your house and you're standing there and you're looking out the window, and there outside the window is a tree or something like this. Okay, now so that your heart, I mean, we got a window here. That's a pretty good picture. Your heart helps you to see the things that are outside of you. Now, one of the things that happens with a window is that if you have a dirty window, let's just say there's a bunch of filth or nonsense on the window. As you look out the window, everything out there looks dirty. There's a film over it. And also everything in here looks dirty. I mean, as the light from the sun travels through the window, it gets distorted and now it makes all of these bad shadows. In other words, if the conscience is unclean, if the conscience is dirty, then everything outside of you looks unclean or dirty, and everything inside of you also looks unclean and dirty. And the other thing, the thing that Daniel and I have been dealing with as we get the light board set up, is that when you have a dirty conscience, like a dirty window, one of the things that happens is you start to see a little reflection of yourself there. And the dirtier the window gets, the more that it looks like a mirror, and you start to see yourself on everything that's outside. Now, the opposite is not exactly true. For example, when we have a clean conscience, let's see if we can clean the window here. If we have a clean conscience, look at that. It doesn't make everything it doesn't make everything inside look clean and everything outside look clean. In fact, something really quite amazing happens. When you have a clean conscience, it makes everything inside look like it is, and everything outside look like it is. In other words, it gives you clarity of sight. It doesn't make things look clean or unclean. It makes all the things outside that are dirty look dirty, and all the things inside that are dirty look dirty, and everything outside that's clean looks clean. In other words, a clean conscience gives you clear sight to see things how they really are. Now, there's a couple of Bible passages that deal with the picture of the conscience as a window like this. Perhaps one of the most famous is one of Luther's favorites in Leviticus, where he says that the unrighteous tremble and run at the shaking of a leaf from. Is that Leviticus or Numbers? I should look that text up. I'll put it in the notes below. When we have a troubled conscience, we look at everything around us and we think, is this God out to get us? Am I being punished for this? Is God mad at me? And now it's being indicated by this sort of thing. So an unclean conscience trembles at all these things that are going around us. But I think the best passage is from St. Paul, who writes to Titus. And this is Titus chapter 1, verse 15, where Paul says, "To the pure, all things are pure, but to those who are defiled and unbelieving, nothing is pure, but even their mind and their conscience are defiled." So that to those who are unbelieving, everything is dirty, everything is unclean, everything is defiled. Now, we have these two pictures of the conscience then. We have the picture of the home plate umpire. We have the picture of the window. And I'd like to offer a third picture for you as well. Let's see if I can find my, yes, different color marker here. The third picture is perhaps the most complex, and my suggestion might be that we'll take this fully up in our second video here. But it is the picture of a courtroom. The conscience is like a courtroom. And just like a courtroom, there's different characters in the conscience. So you, in a rightly ordered conscience, you are the one who's on trial. And you stand before the throne, the judge who sits there, and the judge who sits on the throne is none other than God himself. And you are there standing before God to be judged. You might have the law that's accusing you, and you have the Holy Spirit, who is your defender or your paraclete in the courtroom of the conscience. Now, understanding the conscience as a courtroom gives us a way to understand how the conscience can go wrong. Just as an example, you could play the judge. You put your friends and your family or your enemy up to be judged before you. Or you don't have the Holy Spirit as your defender. Rather, you try to make the devil your defender. Instead of presenting before the judge your own contrition, you try to present your works and declare your own innocence in the courtroom of your conscience. You come into the courtroom of the conscience and you plead not guilty. Now that's a frightful sort of thing, because when you do that, you have Moses, Jesus, and the devil himself all there gathered up to accuse you. And your only friend is yourself. It's just a miserable sort of thing. So when we start to understand the conscience as a courtroom that's happening inside of ourselves, that gives us a way to understand not only how that judgment is being made on earth, but also how that judgment is being made in heaven. So there you go, 3 pictures of the conscience. Tune in for part 2, and we'll expand this a little bit more and talk about how the courtroom of the conscience is also a reflection, at least it ought to be, of the heavenly court. Thanks. Daniel likes it when I remind you guys to subscribe. This is going to be the first in a series of videos on the conscience, these lightboard videos, and we'll probably do 5 or 6 and start to unfold them. And then after that, maybe the whole of Christian doctrine. So we're working on it. If you got ideas, you can post those up below. But to stay in touch with all the videos that we've got going on here and all the other themes that we have going, subscribe and click the bell. That'll give you notifications when new videos come out. And thanks also for sharing, for commenting, for liking. That helps. And if you can imagine it, it's a free way to help get the word of these videos out there. So if you like the content and you want to spread it around to friends and family, we really appreciate you doing that. Thanks. See you next time.